David Mendoza. Thanks for coming on the program, David. It's really great to have you. How are you? How are things going?
Good. I'm doing fine. I just got the news of Julian's denial from the UK Supreme Court, which is pretty disappointing. But other than that, things are fine.
Yeah. So again, I was just telling people that I covered your case because you were extradited from Spain to the US back in 2009. And I was explaining to them that you were given diplomatic assurances, just like Assange is being given now. But not just that, you were also given a contract, a written contract, and they promised that you could serve your sentence in Spain, right? Because the law stipulates that if someone goes to prison, you can't punish the whole family by keeping this sentenced person like so far away that they can't receive visits and be like they're isolated from their family. So the compromise was that you would serve your sentence in Spain. That of course did not happen, and
Right.
yeah, and they made a bunch of other promises, right?
Sorry about interrupting you, Richard, but that law that you're referring to is actually Article 8 of the European Human Rights Charter,
Right.
which is basically it's supposed to protect the children or the family unity. So it's not just, I just want to clarify that, it's just not Spanish law, it's EU law.
Yep, exactly. Yep. So that was one of the things that they had to follow, and of course they broke that. They kept you about 6 years, I think. 6 years and 9 months, was it? They kept you in the
Right.
U.S., and then the only reason you were able to go back was because you sued the U.S. Department of Justice, and you sued Spain and the Spanish Supreme Court twice and won twice. It was quite a remarkable feat.
I was very fortunate, especially understanding what's going on in the Assange case. I was very blessed, to be quite frank with you. I thought I was going to win no matter what because it was black and white to me. But now looking at how the wheels of politics spin, you just don't. Yeah, I honestly did not think the UK court would deny at least a hearing of Assange's situation. Did you actually get that ruling? I mean, have you reviewed it?
Well, they've issued a statement, his lawyers, which I can read again to the viewers right now. So this was published by WikiLeaks, and this is an official statement from Assange's lawyers. They said that on January 24th, 2022, the High Court certified that a point of law of public importance had been raised by Mr. Assange following its rejection of his appeal. And the point certified was that, quote, in what circumstances can an appellate court receive assurances from a requesting state which were not before the court of first instance in extradition proceeding? So again, that's a lot of words just to say one thing, and I'll translate what that is into English. The idea is that Julian Assange, his extradition was blocked. And so the United States appealed that because they want to extradite him. And then the High Court said, okay, you can extradite Assange. And Assange wanted to appeal that to the Supreme Court, but the High Court said, no, they're not going to let him do that. They're going to leave the decision up to the Supreme Court, and they will let him certify one point of law, which is this quote, which I just read to you. In what circumstances can an appellate court receive assurances, and so on? And the idea is that the United States already litigated the case. The United States, during the extradition hearing, they made their arguments about why they didn't want to extradite Assange. They made they built the case against him, and they never once said that Assange can serve his sentence in Australia. They never once said that they won't put him in special administrative measures, which are these really harsh prison conditions. As a matter of fact, they insisted that it's okay. They said that SAMs are like some fun summer camp, So they lost the case. The judge blocked the extradition in January 2021. And then a month later, in February 2021, all of a sudden, the United States comes along and says, okay, fine, we won't put Assange in SAMs. We'll let him go to Australia. And so they give these diplomatic assurances. And the idea here is, in what circumstances is it okay for a requesting state, a state that's trying to extradite someone, to give assurances afterwards when the initial court never heard this, right? Which is what happened, because the United States gave these assurances after the evidential hearing. They didn't do that in the beginning. And of course, this is a legal question. And the Supreme Court, they said that they don't agree, that they're not going to hear this. So a panel of 3 judges of the Supreme Court has considered the application on paper. and this afternoon, on March 14th, 2022, refused permission to appeal on the basis that, quote, the application does not raise an arguable point of law. So that's the reason that there's the Supreme Court denied Julian Assange's appeal. They simply say that his application does not raise an arguable point of law. And I mean, David, just from the way that that things work with you, given that Spain is a party to the Council of Europe, just like the United Kingdom is. Again, this is not the European Union; it's something else. And the UK is still in that. I mean, how does it work with the Supreme Court? Usually, when the Supreme Court hears your case, because they heard two of your cases, it's because it concerns not just you, but also the Constitution, and it's of importance for the general public, right?
That's correct. It's not just only, there's an additional twist to it too. It's not just only Spanish law and the Spanish citizens it can affect, but also EU law and the parameters of the EU chartered rights. I find it hard to understand if it's the position of the appellate court that after the fact, they've presented these assurances, and because of these assurances given by the Americans, then they say, based on such assurances, now the court feels satisfied that Assange's extradition will be within the parameters of what the court established. Well, if that in fact is the case, then the focus should be on the assurances. It's very clear, at least in my case it was, and the Spanish Supreme Court, and right now we're sitting in the UN court. It's very clear that the Americans and Spain, in my case, did not, the executive branches, did not abide by those assurances. Yeah. So in Assange's case, I find it dumbfounding. I mean, that the court doesn't find any merit to the fact that the Americans, I don't want to say always, but the majority of the times don't give a damn about any assurances they give.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm just pulling up on the screen here so people can see again that you were given diplomatic assurances here, which which is basically it's not legally binding, but it is nevertheless a diplomatic assurance from one state to another. And then in addition, you got a contract, right? So down here we can see your signature in the middle, and then on the left we see Siren Madrid, so the Spanish police, and then here on the right Kimberly Weiss, so who works at the U.S. Embassy in Madrid, and she of course signed that too. So we have your signature, Spain's signature, and the U.S. signature, and this is of course a legally binding contract. And that, even though you had a legally binding contract, they broke it, and Spain, in your case, did nothing to enforce the conditions of the agreement, and the U.S. of course is the one that broke it, so they didn't care about that. I mean,
Richard, do you have the English version of that acta de entrega on your computer?
I should. I'm just looking at the article here because I published many documents, so I'm trying to keep up with it. But I can get it in a moment.
Okay, if you could pull it up, I want to show you something that's just so the people understand the value of their assurances and of what they give in writing in English. There should be an English version of that, or you should. I think I did send it to you.
I have here the two versions with one without your signature, but I'll need a moment to dig it up. But I think okay. your point was that the language is quite clear, right? That they have
it's
to.
Very specific. They have to abide by everything is stipulated within the extradition court. And it's very clear at the very last, I think the last sentence, it says, those who sign are in full agreement of what's stipulated within this document. And if you look at the actual document, look at the left-hand side, of that document, you'll see a line going up and down the document. And I distinctly, that line on the left hand, you see that? That's when the gentleman, the Spanish diplomat, said, does everybody fully understand what you're signing here includes everything within this document? And that's when he took his pen and went up and down the left-hand side. The U.S. diplomat, Kimberly Weiss, said yes. I said yes. And the Sirena said yes. And we all signed that document. But the verbiage in English is as blunt as it can be. They never gave me that document. The Spanish executive refused to give me the document, saying it was, and the U.S. executive and Department of Justice refused to give me the document, saying that it was diplomatic communication, and I was not privy to diplomatic communication, even though I signed the document.
I found it. So just give me a moment to pull this up on the screen so people can see it, because the original is obviously in Spanish, but here's the English version. So this, again, it says the record of surrender, right? And so they're saying here, I'm going to read the text to everyone, that they say in accordance with.
Right.
Yeah, go ahead, David. Sorry.
Well, it's that second paragraph there. It says, in accordance with what was previously stipulated by Section 2 of the National Criminal Court, that was Spain's Audiencia Nacional. Their federal courts are divided into 6 sections. So I was placed in section number 2. If you could pull it up again, because I can just see my face on the screen, or unless you want to read it. In court proceedings 20-08, 08 is the year, of extradition 20-08 JC1, within this act, we proceed to formalize the surrender to the authorities of the United States of America, the citizen named David Mendoza Arte. And they're saying specifically, in accordance with what was previously stipulated by the court. That means everything the court stipulated. And then if you go down to the final, I think that's the final phrase, not having anything more sufficient to for further record, this document concluded 10 minutes after its commencement, signing those present as proof of agreement, meaning they're in agreement of this document. We all signed it. I had that. That's a contract. And the reason they refused to give me that contract was because U.S. law is contractual law. And when I went in front of my sentencing judge, and I asked my sentencing judge at the time that he asked me if I had anything to say at the time of sentencing, and I said, the only thing I really have to say is there's some conditions that need to be satisfied, which Spain had imposed on my extradition. And one of those conditions is once I am sentenced, to be returned back to Spain. That's when the Judge Zilli, put his glasses down to the bottom of the tip of his nose, and he looked at me and he said, young man, he said, are you familiar with the international instrument under which you were extradited? I looked at it, I said, yeah, it's a U.S.-Spanish extradition agreement. And he said, that's correct. He said, that's correct. Are you signature on that document? And I didn't quite understand where he was going with that. I said, what do you mean, am I signature? Did you sign that document? Were you part of the signing parties? And I said, obviously not. My country, Spain, is the one who made these agreements with the United States. He said, well, then if there actually is an agreement to send you back, you have no claim under that instrument. Your country is the only one who can make a claim. I can see this is exactly what they're going to do to Assange, while just basically tell him, you have no claim to any of this. Right. So I had an arrangement today to speak with his legal team. They've delayed it till tomorrow, I suspect, because of this ruling. A guy by the name of Edward Grange, I think is his name. But at any rate, these are some of the points that they're going to need to take up now on the second level of judicial petitions. I think the point is we're going to try and take this thing. Well, we're not going to try. They're going to take it to the EU Court of Human Rights because it's clear that the British courts are playing the American game here.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I mean, wow, this case I really hope that people can understand how many irregularities there are, how much foul play, because it's really mind-boggling. I think this is really one of the most corrupt legal cases in history. It's just unbelievable how every step of the way they try to bend the law, break the law. And of course, right now, the latest game is the assurances, right? And I was shocked because in the high court, in the high court, your case was brought up by Julian Assange's lawyers to say, look, Mendoza got assurances and they were broken. The United States didn't respect them. So how can you trust the ones given to Assange? And then the judges come back with their ruling and they say that they looked at your case, at Mendoza's case, and they found nothing wrong with it. I mean, that's incredible. What's your reaction to that?
It's absolutely shameful. I mean, you were the one who told me what this character, Lewis, the prosecutor representing the United States, said to the court. Well, look at Mendoza's back in Spain, so that's not really an issue. He came back to Spain. Well,
yeah, you came back to Spain because you sued the Spain in the Spanish Supreme Court twice, and you sued the DOJ. That's why you came back to Spain. They didn't want to send you. Man.
No, they didn't want to send me, and it cost me a tremendous amount of money, and 6 years, 9 months in a U.S. federal prison, battling literally every day. So it's as insulting as it can be, when you get an individual who's basically misrepresenting truthfulness to the court. But that's part of this whole game. And the ironic part is the person who's telling the truth is the one incarcerated, and the ones that aren't telling the truth are out there preaching democracy and how the judiciary should work. Yeah,
exactly. And again, for those of you who aren't aware, Lewis in this case is the lead prosecutor on the U.S. team. So it's Lewis who is saying that Mendoza was David was allowed to go back to Spain in the end. Yeah, because he fought tooth and nail, and they didn't want to send you back. Again, you had to agree to drop your civil suit against Eric Holder, Obama's attorney general, so they would send you back to Spain, right? Because they knew that you had ammunition. You have this deed of surrender, this contract here with your signature on it, and the U.S.'s contractual law. So you had a good case, and they made you drop it, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. And I was trying to explain this to Assange's legal team. One thing about U.S. law, excuse me, is they don't give a damn about the European courts or the British courts or the Spanish courts. U.S. law is imperial, basically contractual law to them. So what the judges were telling me in my case, once I was in the United States, was Spain can't unilaterally tie our hands. Even though they sent you over, Spain can't make any conditions that the United States has to agree upon first specifically. Spain can't just come out there and put out these conditions, and then we get you here to the United States and we don't have to apply those conditions. And I looked at the judge and I said, well, there is a document that specifies this. And he says, well, if you ever get it, let me know. It took me a lot of years to finally convince a federal judge in Spain to get me that document. Now that's US law. Okay, so I had them with that document. I had them against the ropes in the United States. But where I really scared the crap out of them was I won those 2 cases in the Spain Supreme Court, saying that my human rights were being violated. Well, on the last decision, the second decision, they basically gave the United States a warning shot over the bow of their ship there and said, listen, if you don't get this guy back, meaning if the Spanish executive doesn't get Dave Mendoza back immediately, we will find a way to do that. And the way the court can only do that is by suspending any extraditions to the United States officially. And that would force then their whole extradition agreements between Spain and the United States to go back to Spanish Congress. It would have to get reinstated. It would get back in the public light. All this bullshit that the Americans don't give their word, all of that these dirty games they play underneath the scene would now have to be brought out in the limelight, and they were scared to death of that. That not only were they scared to death of that, the courts started to stop extraditing people. And I think I told you about when the U.S. ambassador came to me when I was in federal prison there and handed me a sheet of paper. And she was, dancing and giggly and, "Oh, we got great news for you, Dave." And I said, "What's the news?" "Sign this document and you'll be heading home in a couple of weeks." I thought it was odd. This doesn't sound right. I start reading the document and it said, basically 5 Colombians, and I forget the names of these individuals, they wanted badly out of Spain to the United States in exchange for Dave Mendoza. I looked at it and I told her, I said, "I'm not signing this document." And that she freaked out. She says, "Oh, you always make things so difficult. Why do you make things so difficult?" I said, "I'm not the one making things difficult. You're the one that's making things difficult. You decide to protect U.S. interest instead of the interests of a Spanish national. And I'm not signing that document because in the court order, it doesn't say 5 Colombians or Germans or Russians or Chinese or whoever in exchange for David Mendoza. It says once Dave Mendoza gets sentenced, he's to come back to Spain, period."
Right.
She couldn't say anything about that. But it just shows you the level of manipulation that was going on here. And like I told you, I'm a nobody in this game. Julian Assange is I really feel bad about him and his family. I mean, they're going to do every dirty trick they can to him. And I know one of those tricks is the whole thing with Australia.
Yep. Yeah. And, I just wanted to read again, the High Court, the UK High Court in December. So just 4 months ago, when they mentioned your case, the judges said they looked at your case. This is what they said. They said that, quote, "We take a similar view of two..." Sorry, I'll just read the previous sentence because it makes sense then. It won't make sense otherwise. So they say that the explanation given by the USA in Diplomatic Note 169 shows the need for a requested person to consider with care the precise terms of an offered assurance, but it does not show that the USA acted in breach of an assurance. We take a similar view of 2 other cases relied on by Mr. Assange, namely those of David Mendoza, so your case, and Abu Hamza. Both can be said to show that the USA may be expected to apply the strict letter of an assurance, which it has given, but neither provides any evidence of a failure to comply with an assurance, and neither provides any support for Mr. Assange's submission that this court should not regard the offered assurances as reliable.
Well, Richard, I think what happened there was
did they see all the documents? Because the documents that I published...
No, they didn't. I think what I'm trying to get to is I think that was an error on the side of Assange's legal team. I wrote them some months back, and I told them, listen, my case is a lot more than just that diplomatic note. And the Americans, when they send these diplomatic notes, they do it with great care on the verbiage.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, the diplomatic note didn't agree to damn anything that they sent. And that's why the Spanish court, which the British courts should do the same, the Spanish courts made very clear, before you hand this guy over, we need exact agreement to what the court stipulated. We need them to agree to that.
Right.
And that's where that acta de entrega or proof of surrender or deed of surrender came into play.
Right.
In Assange's case, that's something that they're going to... Go ahead.
So sorry, just to interrupt, David, but basically what happened is the U.S. gave Spain assurances for you that you could serve your sentence in Spain, and the Spanish courts looked at those assurances and found them so vague that they asked the Spanish government to make sure that there's something better, and that's how they came up with the contract with the acta de entrega, or deed of surrender for you. And I mean, the UK is obviously hasn't done that. I mean, in this case, and it's even worse. It's even more, vague in the language, right?
Right. Well, it's not just that. You have to understand that in Assange's case, they're saying that he can comply. Well, he can once sentenced, he can be allowed to serve his sentence in Australia, and the United States would agree to that. Well, if you look at my case, I think you have my civil suit documents, but in one of the paragraphs that the that the U.S. prosecutor says in that document, because I had a civil suit with the U.S. on the forfeiture. I don't know if you recall that they forfeited about $14 million of my property, so I was fighting to try to get that back. It wasn't part of the crimes or the proceeds of crimes that they were trying to claim it was. But at any rate, in that process, the U.S. prosecutor says very specifically, Spain can make any conditions they want, but we have to specifically agree. All three parties have to specifically agree. That is to say, Spain, the United States, and the defendant. Right. If one of those three parties do not agree, then in essence, any assurance is not valid. So what the game the United States is playing here with Assange is, we will give our assurances that he goes back to Australia. But guess what? They're still waiting on the Aussies' assurances. And will that come? Who knows? If that comes, when will it come? It might come 10 years down his sentence or 20 years down his sentence.
Right. And there's another thing. There's another thing which you and I talked about, which is that even if right this minute Australia picks up the phone and says, yes, we'll take Assange, he can only do that once he's already in the United States and he has fought his case in court and he's gone through the appeals court and the Supreme Court. So everything has to be finalized. The sentence has to be finalized. So that could take 10 years, even if Australia agrees.
Not just that. If you read the conditions, it's not just time. There's financial behind it too, meaning that any fines or
I'll pull it up.
Court costs must be satisfied prior to his leaving. So the courts can say, we're going to fine this guy $50 million.
Yeah.
Until and that fine could be opposed. Who's going to pay? Does he have that type of money? I truly doubt it.
Yeah, I mean, they raised a bunch of money right now, but again, and it's quite substantial. It helps him, but the U.S. are not stupid. They could just look at how much he has and then demand an even higher fee that's impossible to pay, right?
Right.
So again, this is the convention on the transfer of sentenced prisoners, and so this is Article 3 under the Strasbourg Treaty, and it says that a sentenced person may be transferred under this convention only on the following conditions. So B says if the judgment is final, and F is if the sentencing and administering states agree to the transfer. So Australia has not agreed to the transfer, first of all. So this already F is not fulfilled. The judgment is final. That's also not fulfilled. And then, of course, there's the financial aspect, which you mentioned, right?
Right. I'm working on a case right now. I'm assisting with a case right now of a Canadian who was given the exact same agreement on his extradition to the United States 12 years ago. 12 years ago. He went through the whole appeal. They gave him 27 years. It's a marijuana case. He was one of the largest marijuana distributors on the east coast of Canada. A narcotic which is now legal.
It's legal
in Canada and in the state that he was selling it to, just so you understand.
Unbelievable.
He still got a 27-year sentence. He's now been in prison for 12 years. When they extradited him, it was under the condition that he could serve his sentence back in Canada.
Right.
The U.S. said, yes. The judges asked for the United States The Canadian judges asked for the United States agreement to that. The United States said yes. Now, these are Canadian judges. He goes to the United States, he gets a 27-year sentence. He's been battling, and guess who's impeding his return?
Well, of course, it's the U.S.
No, it's the U.S., but the Canadians are the ones that are refusing.
Right, they do.
The Canadian.
It's just like with you. They played it through the Spaniards. They're not doing it directly. They have so much control in the legislative and the executive that they don't need to do it themselves. They can have their allies do it.
Right. Well, guess what they're going to do with Australia with Assange? I mean, it's one of the Five Eyes, like Canada.
There you go.
I mean, guess what they're going to do?
Yeah, it's a vassal state. It's so easy. They don't even have to tell the Australians. The Australians know better. They don't even need to tell them. They're not going to lift a finger for Assange. Shameful. He's their citizen, and they sell him out like that. Really shameful. I mean, David. So, I wanted to ask you a couple of questions just about, in terms of what Assange can do now. I mean, his defense, they can basically cross appeal, but do you think it's likely that they're going to let him do that? Because the cross appeal would mean talking about, the spying, the assassination attempts, the stealing his possessions from the embassy, the threat to press freedoms. I mean, there's a million things here. So, and it's the same judges, by the way, the same high court judges who would make that decision. Do you think they would allow a cross appeal?
I doubt it. But I think it would be wise of the defense to attempt to present everything possible. The more you can get out in the public eye, the better. At least that was in my case. They wanted to hide my case underneath the radar. And when I got a little traction in Spanish media, people started crapping their pants. But that said, I think Assange's case, now it needs to be certified, right? I think that's the next step. When it goes through the certification process, personally, I would take the British executive. Who is it? You said it was some Patel, or who was that?
Yeah, so Priti Patel, she's the Home Secretary, and she signs off on. I mean, the Home Secretary is the authority that signs off on any extradition.
Okay. Well, I would take her to the courts and say, we want to make sure that she, meaning the British executive, is going to be responsible for if any of these conditions are not satisfied to the T, and force a little bit of that play if there's possibility to do that. I'm not very familiar with British law, but I suspect it's somewhat similar to Spanish law. And I would force that process. I would force it to get out there. I would have them take a position, that's the British government, to say, okay, well, it's on our backs that the Americans satisfy these conditions.
Yeah.
And see what the courts say. But I still would take this to the EU Court of Human Rights. I mean, I wouldn't blink an eye for a second on that. I would do it right now.
And I mean, I was talking to Joey Loria earlier, and he said that it's possible that they take this to the European Court of Human Rights, and they rule in Assange's favor, but then the UK can just refuse to abide by the decision. That's correct.
Well, I'm not exactly sure about that because there's a case here that had a relationship with British with a British citizen. And their claim here was that the EU had no more control, or the EU courts had no more control over any British citizens. But at the time of this individual's crime, they were under EU law. And the Spanish courts, at least, ruled that EU law applies to this individual. And I don't know how far up it's going to go, and if the Brits take any stability in that, or I don't know. It's a very good question.
Yeah, it's honestly, it's kind of naive that we expect them to follow the law in a way. Honestly, So you think that basically the best plan of action here is to get Priti Patel, the British executive, to be responsible in case the U.S. they don't abide by their assurances. So, for example, if Assange is taken to the U.S. and they do end up putting him in special administrative measures, the UK government would have to contest that on his behalf, because the issue is Julian Assange. As we saw in your case, Julian Assange is not a signatory of the US-UK extradition treaty, just like you are not a signatory of the Spain-US extradition treaty, which is obvious because you're a natural person and not a country. But it's right. Crazy how that works in the US, this logic. It's really, I don't know, it's banal in a way.
Yeah, I would definitely get it, try to get it where, and I would ask to be part of, or ask the court or the judge to give Julian at least some sort of standing on any non-compliance of assurance. Now, again, even if the British courts do give him standing, the American courts aren't going to give a damn about that. I've read literally thousands of cases, and they make it very clear that no country can unilaterally tie the hands of a U.S. court. Period. And it's ironic because here's what my argument was to the Spanish courts. These assholes, and excuse my language, I said they accepted my extradition, meaning me in person. I get to the United States, but then when I'm there in their jurisdiction, they say, well, this part of the extradition, meaning to sentence this guy to 14 years is fine. But this other part of the extradition, we're not going to abide by. Well, You can't pick and choose on an extradition. If you decide that you're going to take this individual, you're going to take this individual with all of the conditions that it implies, right, or the court stipulates. And that's where the Spanish judges, though even the ones who were against me, were having a very difficult time to attempt to explain to the public. And I think, fortunately, in my case, once I got in front of the news here, the public started to ask the Spanish judges, wait a minute here, what's going on here? The Americans took this guy, he was extradited, there were these conditions. Now, once he's in their jurisdiction, they're saying, well, we're not going to abide by these other conditions, but this part to sentence him, we are. Didn't make sense.
Yeah, so again, they're basically picking and choosing. They're cherry picking what part of the agreement they want. Okay, yeah, we'll take him and we'll give him a nice lengthy sentence, but we ain't sending him back. We don't like that part. And they're going to do the same with Assange, probably, right?
Oh, I have no doubt, no doubt whatsoever. Like I told you, Richard, I'm a nobody, and Julian is a somebody in this whole game of geopolitics. And I can tell you, they're going to do everything possible to screw this guy. I feel really bad for him.
Yeah, it's even if they don't put him in special administrative measures, they can put him in a communication management unit or a special housing unit, which is just as tough. Again, I mean, yeah, they vary slightly. It's still solitary. It's still suffering, and then they can see we didn't break the argument, the agreement. Sorry, it's horrible.
CMU. He's going to go to CMU 100% on that. I told you I've helped a couple individuals out on their extraditions or renditions. And they're all in CMUs, and just me communicating with them, they won't allow that because I'm an ex-federal. They said, nope, none of your letters can get, so I have to go through the route of, they get in a U.S. attorney, I have to send my communication to the U.S. attorney, and then they get client attorney privilege to read it. But I can assure you, Julian's going to a CMU, Terre Haute or someplace like that. Mark my words.
Yeah, it's horrible, and actually, this is a bit off topic, but also not really, because we're talking about political prisoners. There's also one guy, I don't know if you or the viewers heard of this guy. He's called George Abdullah, and he's a Lebanese Christian, and he's a freedom fighter, and he's been 38 years in a French prison because they claim he killed an Israeli and an American officers or diplomat. I don't know. He's the longest political prisoner in Europe, And his case is extraordinary as well. I mean, this guy, they really tried to bury him away from the media. It's why even I didn't know about him until a few months ago. So yeah, we could discuss this case another time because it's really crazy. Because he's been allowed out on parole since 2009, and every single year they refuse it's crazy. And just in terms of Julian being denied permission to appeal to the UK Supreme Court, do you think that do you agree with what Joey said earlier, that basically right now, because of this conflict with Russia and Ukraine and everyone being against Russia, and they thought that, well, Assange is associated with Russia. He's not, but they claim he's a Kremlin asset because that's how liberals insult people. So do you think that to avoid that kind of heat, they denied him permission? Or other people are thinking that maybe it's because there's a war on and everybody's eyes and attention is fixed on this war, they could just kind of, screw him with the Supreme Court while no one's looking?
I think it's that. I think it's the latter. I think it's, right as I heard this decision, I said, well, obviously this war is what's the main news. So they're going to try and slip this thing through as quickly as possible. That's quite honestly, about a half an hour before I got onto your show, I got a call from, it just shows you a little bit I got a call from a guy's wife that his name is Victor Boot. I don't know if you've ever heard that name before. He was extradited. He's Russian. He was extradited out of Thailand to the United States. And you know what the charges were against him? Selling firearms in order to kill a U.S. citizen. Okay. And I spoke with his wife about, I don't know, half an hour before you and I communicated to come on this show. And she said, David, you know what makes me so angry about this? I said, what's that? He goes, my husband got a 25-year sentence. I said, I know. I'm trying to help him get back home. There's a trade process going on, but that's a whole different issue. But at any rate, she said, David, right now there are U.S. mercenaries fighting on behalf of the Ukraine, in Ukraine, killing Russian soldiers. So if the Russians were to capture 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 of these guys, do we have the opportunity to send them to 25 or 30 years? Or is everybody going to say, oh, you got to send them back? Why is it that my husband, who sold firearms supposedly to, I think it was a Colombian FARC, why does the U.S. have the opportunity to make their internal laws unilateral against the rest of the world, and the Russians don't? It's a very good point. I couldn't answer it.
Yep. It's really, again, the fancy word for it is extraterritorialization, where they're basically imposing U.S. law on everyone else. And that's why when the extradition hearing was finished in London, and I came out and I gave that speech, I said this is a UK court and we're standing in London, but the United States is holding that gavel, that law, that circus that's going on in there. That's the U.S. is running that. Make no mistake. You know this, I know this, and we know what the game is like. And you saw this also, how in your case, how deeply embedded the United States was inside Spain, how they're controlling through the U.S. Embassy in Madrid, they're controlling the executive, the legislative, the kind of power and influence that they wield. It's quite incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, I'll tell you. I think you obviously know my case, but when I got back to Spain, when I forced my return back to Spain, I was under Spanish law. The maximum sentence to be served was a maximum for my crime, which is marijuana, was 6 years, I think, 6 years and a month or something like that. It didn't go over right around 6 years maximum. Right. Generally, for a marijuana crime in Spain, you get about 24 months. Anyway, I got 14 years. When I got back to Spain, I got in front of a judge by the name of Grande Marlaska. Mm-hmm. And he initially told my attorney that I would be heading home because Spanish law did not allow for that type of sentence. About a week later, when we were going into official hearings, meaning to get my sentence converted to a Spanish sentence so I could be released, he said, no, the sentence is going to stand. And I looked at him and I said, how can that be? There's nothing in Spanish law that will permit you to do this. And he just said, well, this is what it's going to be. And basically, that's why my case is now in front of the United Nations. And fortunately, they accepted my case. They only accept about 1% to 3% of all cases presented to them, and they accepted my case. So
Yep.
We're hoping for a favorable ruling. But my point is the Americans touched him. The U.S. Embassy in Madrid told him he's staying in prison. You got him back what you wanted, but he's going to stay in prison. And law 101, I mean, you can't make up new law. You can't do that, because when the crime occurred and when I was sentenced, the maximum sentence was 6 years in Spain.
Yeah. So they were giving you a new a punishment from the new updated law for an old crime that you committed before the law was updated. I mean, that's incredible. They want to keep you in jail for it, and you know, they punish you. But it should be the other way around. Usually when they change laws, it's you know, if you apply it retroactively, it's supposed to be to the betterment of the prisoner or the sentenced person, right? So you actually should have been released, not.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Everybody knew what the game was going on here, but your point is a very, very obvious one. It just shows you how the influence and how well integrated the Americans are into these foreign courts.
Yep.
And it basically, they kept me an additional, let's see, 6 years, 7 years, an additional about 5 years more in my sentence.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
That's horrible. Yeah, and it's taken a huge toll, not financially, and of course, but psychologically with your family also. I mean, it's really a cruel punishment, and it's really a system created by these neoliberals like Biden with the crime bill and all of these people like Kamala Harris. It's really horrible how evil and cruel it is, truly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they accomplished basically what the courts attempted to protect. They accomplished that my family was broken up. They accomplished the fact that everything around me, like I said, both my parents passed away while I was in prison. When I got back to Spain, I mean, I couldn't even. My mother was dying of pancreatic cancer. She was in stage 4 pancreatic cancer. All I asked was the Spanish courts to at least allow me to leave for 1 day furlough and allow me to hug my mom before she passed away. And they just said, no, there's too much pressure by the Americans. And it is what it is. I mean, you know, it just shows you the tremendous amount of pressure that the Americans have on our judiciary here.
Yeah.
And you're fooling yourself if you think they're not. I mean, you saw that video of Kimberly Weiss. I don't know where you got that from, but she readily admitted. And Kimberly Weiss is the lady who handles all extraditions out of Spain.
Right.
And she readily admits she knows the prosecutors, she knows the judges, she knows the cops, she knows them all.
Yep. Yeah. That she let it slip. You know that she's yeah, I mean, like you said, they know everyone in the judicial system and they run it, and Spain is not an exception, it's the norm. The UK is another example, Australia is another example. This is how it works. It's not just people tend to think of it like it's just military power. No, they also do it through diplomatic channels, and that's how they exert their power. And
another point, just so you know, is that when I was suing Eric Holder to get for failure to comply in Obama, for failure to comply with the contract, I mentioned Kimberly Weiss's name, saying she signed this document. The Americans were furious that name was put out there in the public eye.
Really?
And the Spanish told me, "Oh no, you got to take that name out." it just shows you that they don't want their faces. Well, if you're proud about what you're doing, put your name on it, put your face out there.
Dave, hold on. Didn't you tell me a few weeks ago that the State Department were snooping on your LinkedIn profile? Yeah, that means they heard of the what we published. They heard of the article. Yeah.
Oh, no doubt, Richard. No doubt. You're getting out there, and believe me. To me, I don't give a damn, because I'm living on my farm here in northern Spain, and I'm having the time of my life building. I'm not in anything illicit.
Of course, we're not doing anything wrong. It's just,
But believe me, what they're doing to Assange, all of you guys who put out their true, honest information need to look behind your back, because I'm telling you, they're watching you, Richard. If you don't think so, you're fooling yourself. Be very careful.
Yeah, it's when you sent me that picture, because for those of you who don't know, when you have a LinkedIn profile, they tell you who's been looking at your profile, and Dave had someone from the State Department looking at his profile for some reason. I mean, the timing of that it's just a few months after this article came out. I don't think that's a coincidence.
No, there's no coincidence there. There's no coincidence.
I mean, that would be an astronomical coincidence, but yeah.
Yeah, and what the hell is the State Department, the U.S. State Department, looking at my LinkedIn? So it doesn't make any sense.
Of course,
your article.
Yeah. Dave, is there anything else you'd like to add? Something we didn't touch on in regards to your case or to Assange, or where you think this thing is going to go?
I just if there's somehow an opportunity for his wife or somebody close to Julian to hear this, don't give up. He's going to have a lot of dark days in that cell. Believe me, I lived them. Yeah. Don't give up, because I didn't give up. And there was high power attorneys. I spent probably on my entire case over close to damn near $1 million. I should have thrown that money out the window because it was worthless. I spoke to very high power attorneys. I hired some in the States. They all ended up telling me, you got nothing, no way, you're not going back to Spain. When you're sitting in a jail cell, you have a wife. I had 2 kids at the time, like Julian does. A lot of things go through your head. Don't give up. Don't give up, because at some point that positive fight, and he's like, I think we're probably of the same character. We're both fighters. I'm hoping like hell he'll get the great results that I got. That's all I can wish for the man.
Yeah, I think we all share your sentiment, and always hoping for the best for him. And again, I appreciate you sharing your story, just getting this out there, because I think it's important, not just for Assange's case, but that people know your story as well, because then you really start to see that there's a systemic inherent nature to the U.S. State Department and Department of Justice with this extradition complex that they have, as I call it, this extradition complex, and how they exert power over other countries' judiciaries. I think this is really important, and your case and Assange's case are really quintessential examples of that. And again, really admire your bravery, David, and everything you've been through. I can see it here in the comments also. People are really showing a lot of sympathy, and they admire your bravery and sticking through all of that. So again, thank you so much. And you came on such short notice also. I appreciate that too.
Thanks, Richard. I appreciate who you are, and quite honestly, your honesty. I mean, like I said, be careful, because you're one of the few. And hopefully the more people who understand the honesty and the truthfulness of what's being done to Julian. I have arguments with guys in the States that I'm very close friends with, who consider themselves as liberals, who still make silly statements like, why are you protecting a rapist? And I like, where in the F are you getting that from? I said, look at the facts, But that's the propaganda media that
it's
you
so
get
effective.
in the United States. It's very effective, and it's guys that I used to run around with, and I thought they were intelligent individuals. But I appreciate who you are, Richard, and I appreciate your honesty. And gosh, what's his name?
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. At any rate, thank you for calling me on here, and
Of course,
we'll talk again. Okay.
Yes, thank you very much, brother. I'll see you later, and we'll talk in a bit. Thank you again.
Okay.
All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye-bye.